You're binging HGTV, Bigger Pockets, and YouTube, just like everybody else. But somehow they're getting rich and you're barely breaking even. Now, the truth is that people out there giving that advice are either playing a completely different game on a completely different scale, or they're just trying to sell you something. And sounding smart is kind of part of the pitch. Now, I started investing in 2011, but I didn't actually start making money until 2018 because most of the advice that I was following was incomplete, out of context, or just flat out wrong. That's right. It took me 7 years to learn what I'm about to teach you in the next 10-ish, maybe 20 minutes. The contrarian habits that top 1% flippers and real estate investors actually use. So let's get into it. Now, just so you guys know, each one of these points are going to build upon each other, so don't be skipping around. Now, did you know that you could be extremely wealthy, but still struggle to put food on the table? And that's exactly what happened to me. I was worth millions of dollars on paper, but I was trying to figure out how I was going to pay normal bills. Because here's the thing, your personal financial statement is not going to buy groceries. It's like this. Imagine a guy walks into the ER. He's in the middle of a heart attack. He's clutching his chest. He can barely breathe. And the doctor sits him down to talk about long-term health planning, like his meal plan and his cardio routine. And you're like, man, not right now. The dude doesn't need a salad. He needs heart surgery, or like Bayer aspirin, whatever they do for heart attacks in the ER. Now, that's how a lot of new investors think. I know that I did. They've read all the stuff about rentals and passive income on places like Bigger Pockets, and they've heard about legacy wealth, generational wealth, and that's all true. That is the goal. But if you're in a cash crunch, a financial heart attack, you just don't need a diet plan. You need income now. So that's why I always look through the 3 time horizons of wealth. This is the framework that I use to decide what move I should be making. There's the short term. This is like your job or a small business that's bringing you in money on a weekly or monthly basis. You need this to survive. And then there's the medium term. These are like flips, big chunks of cash that you bring in every few months. This is what helps accelerate your growth. And then there's the long term. For us, these are rental properties. And when you're starting out, most of your income is going to come from that first bucket, the short-term bucket. But over time, if you play it right, more shifts into the medium term and the long term. And eventually, all of it is going to be in the long term. P.S. Eventually, these rentals are also going to start bringing your short-term cash through rental income and your medium-term cash through refinances, cash out refinances. But anyway, you can't jump straight into rentals if you're broke. Even after you've worked your way up to buying rentals, you need to make sure that you keep following habit number 1. And that's that pro investors are always balancing tomorrow's wealth with today's cash. So here's the question. How do you know when it's time for you to start flipping houses? Well, once these following rules can be followed, you're ready to flip. Number 1 is never exceed the 70% rule on a flip. That means that if the renovated house is going to sell for $400,000, well, your total budget, that's your purchase price plus your renovation, should not be more than $280,000. That's 70% of the $400,000. Number 2 is always have a 20% contingency. So if you think your project is going to cost $60,000, make sure you're planning for $72,000. And 3, escrow everything. That means insurance, closing costs, interest, utilities, etc., etc., etc. These are all holding costs. You either need to stash that cash in a separate account or make sure that your lender is going to fund it. And finally, number 4, make sure that you cover your personal bills during the duration of the flip, whether it's from your job, from a side hustle, from your business, or you have some chunk of cash from inheritance or savings or whatever. You need to make sure that the funds are set aside so that way you're not dipping into project money for your daily living expenses. And let me just say, if you think the project is going to take 3 months, you're wrong. It's going to take more. Now, if you can follow these rules, you are ready to move from the short term to the medium term. And then everything is a flip until you've earned the right to hold it as a rental. So don't try to keep wealth until you can actually afford to keep it. Think of your real estate organization like a car engine. Without oil, your engine will lock up and be out of commission. And cash flow is your business's oil. Also, side note here, guys, I made a flipping calculator to help me decide what I should pay for a property. It's basically like the 70% rule on steroids. I haven't made it available to the public because, quite honestly, I'd have to figure out how. But if you're interested, why don't you hit me up in the comments and I'll see what I can do. Now, early on, I thought the key to making money in real estate was getting construction done cheaper. That's literally why I started a construction company. And so I could control the work, I could cut the cost, and I could boost my profits. But here's what actually happened. I was buying houses off the MLS, the market, that didn't have any room in them, no profit to be made. So what I had to do was take on massive renovations. I was literally on some of these houses taking the roof off and building a second story just to add square footage so I could up my sales price. It was high risk, it was super expensive, and even if I pulled it off, I barely made any money. Why? Because I was trying to turn bad deals into good ones through brute force. And construction always takes longer and costs more than you think it's going to. It's like trying to lose weight by working out harder and harder while you're still eating fast food every night on the way home from the gym. You're sweating buckets, burning as many calories as humanly possible, but the fat won't budge. That's because the real problem, guys, is in the kitchen, not in the gym. But it all changed for me when I walked into this one house. It was an absolute horror show. Windows boarded up, adult toys everywhere, signs of some weird parties that had taken place, old mattresses and syringes literally all around the property. And the highlight, dead center of the living room, an actual human feces, fresh. Yeah, disgusting. But I bought that house for $21,000. I spent about $30,000 to clean it up and do a small renovation. And when it appraised, it came in at $200,000. Because I bought it so cheap, I had massive room for mistakes. And I make a lot of mistakes. But even after those huge mistakes, there was still a huge margin in it. But the best part, lenders loved it. Because I was all in for $50,000 on a $200,000 house. It's like the safest deal they've ever seen. This was actually one of the first times I bought a house with literally $0 out of my own pocket. Now, that's not the point of this section, but I just wanted you to know that the stronger the deal, the easier everything else gets. Now, here's something that I teach all of my students. The 4 things that you actually control in real estate. And they're, number 1, the deal, what you buy and at what price you buy it for. 2 is the strategy, your scope of work and your plan for that project. 3 is the work, that's managing the actual construction project. And number 4, that's the market, how much you're going to sell that house for or what it appraises for if you're doing a refinance. And what I finally realized is this. The deal is the most important variable. Everything else, your scope, your crew, your timeline, it can all go sideways and you can still win if you bought right. Just think about it. Construction costs what construction costs. There's material and labor. It's mostly fixed. And sure, some people overpay, and we talk a lot on this channel about how you mitigate that. But for the most part, you're going to pay what you pay. There's just a market price for construction. And the market, well, you can't change what people are going to be willing to pay for a house. You can only try to optimize for the neighborhood that you're selling in. And the scope of work, well, keep that in mind. We're going to get into that here in one of the next habits. So how do you actually find these deals? Well, there's 4 main ways. The MLS or the market, it's possible to find deals here depending on the market conditions, but it's kind of like a bidding war platform by design. Think supply and demand here. Everybody is here. Demand is as high as possible. Therefore, the price is going to be as high as it can possibly be. There are strategies that work there. We're not going to get into them today. Now, 2 is wholesalers. You pay a fee for these guys, but they're often sourcing houses in the conditions that investors can force appreciation into, right? That's the game. You buy a house that needs something to make it worth more. You force appreciation into it. Therefore, with wholesalers, there are deals to be had. Now, direct to seller. Number 3, this is where you become your own deal source. You are potentially making yourself a market of one. Remember, supply and demand. The demand is only you. You are the only person talking to this potential seller. No realtors, no wholesalers, no inspectors, etc. Nobody else is trying to make a cut off of this and cutting into both the profits for the seller and the deal that you're able to get. And number 4 are banks. Now here I'm talking about things like foreclosures, auctions, tax sales. These strategies can work well in certain market conditions, generally the same ones that work well for the MLS. But here's the habit. Top 1% flippers obsess over the deal, not the drywall. They know that if the deals make sense on day one, that they've already won the hardest part of the game. Nothing else has cost my clients more money than this. And I've lost my fair share too. In fact, on this property, I lost over 6 figures. And look how pretty it was. You see, I went into that deal thinking that I could sell it for close to $800,000. You see where I listed it for $795,000. But the truth is, the most that neighborhood could support was $667,500. Oops. See, it's like this. Imagine you pull into a truck stop diner. You're hungover, you're tired, and you just want some greasy and cheap food, like the dollars per calorie kind of meal. You got $20 in your pocket to make that headache go away. But instead, the waitress comes out, hands you a menu that's full of dainty gourmet dishes for $50 a pop. We didn't come here for a filet mignon. No, you came here for some bacon and eggs. And that's what I did. I served up the gourmet renovation in a neighborhood that wanted some comfort food. And guess what? I could not sell it for the cost to make it. And so anyway, while I was grinding away to finish this overbuilt flip, literally having to sell my truck just to go buy materials, this guy buys the house across the street for $423,000. He didn't take the roof off. He didn't do any custom concrete or a custom steel staircase in the middle of the living room. He put in some budget floors, some basic cabinets. He even left the carpet in the bedrooms. I think maybe he did some steam cleaning or something. Probably spent less than $30,000 total. I actually made friends with this guy. He did all of this stuff while wearing flip-flops, and he was growing a weed garden in the back of his property. It was in Colorado, by the way. Totally legal. And then, guys, he sold that house for $600,000. Same street, similar price, way less money, and way less risk. Meanwhile, I'm over here across the street building the Taj Mahal and losing 6 figures. And that's when it hit me. I was suffering from what I've come to know as the HGTV dilemma. I had learned to flip houses by watching TV shows. So I thought that every flip needed to be beautiful, unique, high design. But that is not how the real pros make their money. You see, the people on HGTV, they get paid because you're watching. Ad revenues, sponsorships, that's not a business model that the average solo investor like you and I can copy. Now, after that brutal loss, I made myself a promise. I would never over-renovate a property again, only optimize. So, how do you optimize? Well, just to be clear, that doesn't mean cutting corners. It means knowing exactly how much renovation is needed to sell that house fast for the optimum price in that neighborhood. So here's my 4-step process that I use in every flip. Step number 1, you got to know your comps. What is the absolute top price that homes are selling for in that neighborhood? What finishes do those homes have? What features do they not have? Now, if your comps show houses topping out at around $667,000, well, you're not going to get $800K, no matter how fancy your fixtures. Every dollar you spend past what the neighborhood ceiling is money straight down the drain. Now, step number 2, you do the baseline. In those houses, in those comps, you're going to figure out what the minimum standard is for that neighborhood. If every comp has granite countertops and fresh paint, well, you need to do granite countertops and fresh paint. If they don't have crown molding, well, don't do crown molding. It's not cool to waste money. Match the standard, but don't exceed it across the entire house. You're not building the showpiece here. You're matching buyers' expectations, except for the big 3. That's step number 3. Once you know the baseline, you can strategically elevate on just a few key features. So I call these the big three. It's the first three things that people are going to see when they walk up to and into the house. So first thing is the curb appeal. That's the buyer's first impression. It basically creates the filter in which they see the rest of the house. So make sure you put a little bit of extra money. And then there's the entryway. What do they actually see when they open that front door? And then one more thing, there's always a wow room. Usually it's the kitchen. Maybe it's a bathroom if the bathroom is right there at the front door. But you push these things just a little bit above the baseline, just enough to impress. I don't know if you got that. If the bathroom is right at the front door, I'm going to put a little extra into it. If it's in the back of the house, I'm only giving it the baseline. The idea is basically like this. The first few things, the first three things that a buyer sees sells them on the property. And the rest of the walkthrough on the house is just making sure they don't get unsold. And the baseline will do the job there. Now, step number 4 is stick to the dang plan. Now, this is where a lot of flippers fail. They get into a project and they start making impulse upgrades. Like, let's just replace the vanity too. Oh man, this tile would look amazing here. I mean, we're already inside the wall. We might as well add X, Y, and Z. Just stop. Every small add-on chips away at your margin. Stick to the plan you made based on the comps, not based on what feels fun in the moment. Now, most people are confused when I start talking about building a recruiting pipeline for contractors. Because in their mind, contractors are just a public service, right? You call, they show up, they beg you for a job, and you just pick the cheapest one. Or you're on the opposite end. You came from maybe a corporate background or a leadership background, and you assume that contractors are plug and play professionals. You hire one, you hand them the keys, they get the job done. On time, under budget, no issues. They're the pro, right? Well, both of these approaches are going to fail. Now, when I started out, I was more on the second side, the corporate background side. I thought that I could just hire somebody, tell them the general idea, and they would handle it like a pro. I thought that basically they just understand my vision, know what to do, and care as much as I did. That assumption, guys, cost me big. Not because contractors are evil or lazy, but because reading minds is not part of their job description. They're not Miss Cleo. Now, eventually, I got so fed up that I overcorrected. I became a micromanaging monster. I would show up every day to breathe down these guys' necks just to make sure they were doing the job exactly like I wanted it done. And that certainly worked, at least for a while. But then all of my time went into babysitting projects. And worse, I was constantly scrambling to find new contractors because, well, it turns out that people don't like working under a dictatorship. That's when I realized that this is no different than any other business. It is way cheaper to retain and coach up a solid contractor than it is to constantly be recruiting new ones. Because this is the reality. In real estate, project management is the job. And contractors are who you are managing for the most part. So instead of working against the reality, I started working with it. And yes, you should build relationship capital. And yes, you should practice strong leadership. But no matter how good you are, you're still going to lose some of these contractors over time. Sometimes good contractors go bad. Some price themselves out of your budget, and others just aren't a fit for certain jobs. And that's why you need a deep contractor pipeline. A depth chart, like a football team. You don't just have your starting quarterback, you got second string and third string. And here is my 4-part contractor recruiting system. Number 1, you got to keep a CRM. This can be on a spreadsheet or even a notebook. You just need to track every contractor you meet. Name, trade, where you met them, what kind of work they do, their phone number, any notes on the conversation that you had with them, so you can recall later. Number 2 is you're going to actually make contact with these people. You're going to approach them like a professional. You say something along the lines of, hey, I'm a real estate investor here in the area. I do multiple projects per year, and I really focus on building long-term relationships with great contractors. I like to create win-win situations, and I pay people fast. Could I grab your number? Listen, just be confident. They are used to working with unorganized homeowners. Number 3 is you want to follow up immediately. So the next day, I send them a quick text, say something like, hey, I'm the big ugly guy with the beard that you met at Home Depot yesterday. I just wanted to make sure you had my number, and I'll reach out to you soon with some upcoming projects. This is a simple step, and it earns trust. Number 4, you're going to stay in touch. So one of 2 things is going to happen after this. Either one, you're going to have a job that opens up and you invite them to come give you a bid for that job. Or number 2, you don't have any jobs coming up because maybe you have your first string quarterback already on it, but you want to save this guy for later. So you just every month, maybe every few months, just shoot them a text, remind them, keep it warm, so to speak. Next question, where the heck do you find these guys? Well, here are my go-to sources. Number 1 are places like Home Depot and Lowe's. I mean, literally like 90 to 95% of the contractors I work with come from Home Depot or Lowe's. I just look for people that have drywall dust on their clothes and I start a conversation. Usually you can spot the hustlers. And in fact, if you do it enough and if you look confident enough, they'll approach you. Number 2 is like trade supply stores, especially if you're looking for like an HVAC guy or an electrician or a plumber or somebody that does specific jobs, siding or roofing. Well, they're probably not going to be at Home Depot or Lowe's. They're probably going to be at specific supply stores that supply siding or roofing. Now, with these, when I'm trying to find a specific contractor like that, I'll go into one of these supply stores. I'll go talk to the people that are doing the sales and I'll say, who's buying the most material lately? Because if you want something done, ask a busy man. That's a quote, not my quote. Wish it was. Number 3, gas stations. I know. It sounds odd, but I have met a lot of legit contractors pumping gas at the gas station. If I see a work van, white work van with ladders on the top, I see people with drywall dust or paint all over their pants, I'm going to go introduce myself. In fact, it's not just gas stations, restaurants, my kids' pickup line at school. I don't care. If I see somebody that looks like a contractor that could be good for our organization, I'm going to go introduce myself. Number 4 is referrals. Now, you got to be really careful here because if it's your buddy who's a real estate investor that's giving you a referral, well, you got to be asking yourself, if contractors are the number 1 tool for my success as a real estate investor, why the heck would anybody be giving up their name and number? It's probably because they're not the best ones. However, if your buddy who is doing a renovation on their personal house, probably the only renovation they're ever going to do, if they give you a referral, might be legit. If an electrician gives you the referral of a plumber, probably legit because that electrician doesn't want to muddy their name with a crappy plumber. Totally unplanned with the crappy plumber thing. Pretty sweet though. Now, I got to tell you, banks are the worst place to get money from. And I sure as heck did not understand that when I was just starting out. Now, let me walk you through the math and you'll understand. So you're buying a property for, let's say, $200,000. You've got a $60,000 renovation and maybe another $20,000 of holding and closing costs. So all in, that's $280,000. Now, let's say you walk into a bank. They're going to loan you 80% of the purchase price only. That's 80% of the $200K, which comes out to $160,000. For the $60K rehab, nothing. $20K of other costs, nothing. Total loan, $160,000. So now you need to come up with the difference. $280,000 minus the $160,000 that the bank will loan you. That means you have to come out of pocket $120,000. Good luck, beginners, unless you got deep savings or an inheritance or maybe like a rich uncle. You're simply not going to be buying your first flips with bank money, or maybe ever. I don't think I've ever had to use bank money for a flip. So that's where hard money lenders come into play. I know, it sounds pretty tough, but in reality, they are built for people like us. Here's the key. They don't care about your income. They don't care about your savings. Most don't care about your credit score. Remember that deal? Purchase price, $200,000, renovation plus other cost, another $80,000. Well, they don't really care about that either. All they care about is the after repair value, the ARV. So let's say the ARV, what you can sell the house for after it's renovated, is $400,000. That would be a pretty standard deal. Now, a typical hard money lender will loan you 70% of the ARV. So in that case, 70% of $400,000 is $280,000, exactly what you needed to fund that entire project. And that is how investors get into deals with zero money down. What happened on your first deal? Probably not, because just like any vendor, you're going to need to build up some street cred before they start giving you $0 down deals. But after you have a few successful flips under your belt, you never know. You'll likely need to bring some money to the table on your first one, though. And honestly, you should. You should have some cash reserves that you're able to bring to the table. But that is how investors end up graduating to no money down deals. And it all ties back to habit number 2. When you prioritize the deal over everything else, the money becomes the easiest part. Now, I've got one more habit for you as a bonus, and this one might ruffle some feathers. See, all that stuff you hear about, well, you just got to build a great team. It's BS. And just like I told you in the contractor section, that you can't be blindly building trust with people because they don't know what's best for your business. You're going to get run over in this game if that's what you're doing. And sure, there are some great vendors out there, and yeah, you can call them teammates if you want to, but at the end of the day, they're running their business, not your business. You're just one of the many people that pay them money to work with them. So what's the habit? Top 1% flippers do not outsource their thinking, their problem solving. They don't blindly trust. They manage, not by micromanaging, but by understanding how every part of the business works so they can make informed decisions and actually lead. Guys, that means understanding your numbers, understanding construction, understanding financing, and understanding the real estate market. Now, you don't need to know everything, but you do need to know how to manage everything. Because here's the equation that changed my life. Knowledge times experience equals skills. And once you have skills, you got the leverage. You can weather the hard times, pivot when the market shifts, and ultimately win in the long haul. And that's why I built this channel, is to give you frameworks and steps to build those skills for yourself. Because no matter how tough things have gotten for me, and trust me, there have been some really tough times, my skills as a real estate investor were always there to carry me through. And that's what I want for you guys. So check out my next video, linked it right here, and I'll see you at the next one. Thank you.